Hello everybody, Ellie here for TrekCulture. Once again, news has dropped and Mr. Sean Ferrick is somewhere in the world, but not here. Seems to have become a bit of a thing at this point, hasn't it? Just be sure that if Sean goes away, news will come. Anyway, I'm sure many of you will be aware that the past weekend/week has been Star Trek Las Vegas 2025. Am I sad not to be there? Yes, I am. Was it 30 years celebrating Voyager? Yes, it was. Let's not talk about it. Anywho, ahead of Star Trek Las Vegas this year, TrekMovie.com had an exclusive interview with Star Trek writer-producer Michael Sussman. And he revealed that alongside Scott Bakula, he has been developing a series concept for a new Archer series moving forwards. That's exciting. Now they've even got a name for this, Star Trek United, either with a colon or without, yet to be decided, but this is such an exciting thing. The possibility of having a new series starring Scott Bakula returning as Captain Archer. I mean, what? So Sussman revealed in this interview that the idea came to him when Star Trek Picard was airing. And I think, like a lot of us fans, he and Bakula were joking about, when are we going to see Star Trek Archer? Just as we have said, when are we going to see Star Trek Janeway? When are we going to see Star Trek Cisco? You know, we had this new series focusing on one of these legacy characters named after them. And so naturally we all started to wonder, are we going to start seeing this become a bit of a thing, a bit of a theme with returning legacy characters? So what started as a joke between Bakula and Sussman actually then sparked a genuine idea in Sussman, because he'd actually planted a seed, unknowingly at the time, when he wrote his last episode for Star Trek Enterprise, In a Mirror Darkly Part 2. So in that episode, we're in the Mirror universe, and at some point in the episode, Mirror Archer accesses a Starfleet database from the future, which reveals that Prime Universe Archer would someday become president of the United Federation of Planets. So Sussman revealed in this interview that when they were writing this episode, when this episode was being produced, he specifically wanted a writer to create the graphic for this Starfleet database, rather than someone from the art department, because he was aware that this was basically going to spell out Archer's life, even once the series had ended. And he was also acutely aware of the fact that the show was going to be put on ice for a while, let's just say. And so he was aware that this graphic may appear on screen for viewers to see, and therefore the information that was on it would be considered canon, even once the show had finished airing. And that's exactly what did happen. So then when it came to this initial joke about a new series starring Archer, he realised, hang on a second, I've actually laid the groundwork for this already. Back when. I have the seed planted to move forward with a genuine idea for a future series starring Archer that isn't just a rehash of Enterprise. So he describes the concept as, quote, a political thriller and a family drama set in those chaotic, formative years of the Federation. I mean, he also went on to emphasize that he wanted this to be more of a mature show, saying, again, quote, one of my aspirations would be that the series could do for Star Trek what Andor did for Star Wars, in a show where you can tell adult stories about adults and tell them in a very grounded, realistic way. I mean, that definitely sounds interesting, to have something different than what we've seen in Star Trek before. And I think that's the key here. As I just said, it's not to just rehash old ideas with an excuse to bring back legacy characters. It's doing that, but also moving forward with something that's new and that's going to grip new viewers and modern viewers. Now, obviously, I've been saying this is the idea he's had, and I can hear you all saying, but that doesn't mean that it's happening, Ellie. Well, that is true, but this was more than just an idea that they had over coffee one day, because with Bakula's approval, Sussman took this concept to Secret Hideout, to Alex Kurtzman, and he didn't fully pitch the idea with everything, all of the characters and everything, but he gave a pretty hefty overview outline of this concept that he wanted to produce. And they did take it very seriously, they did consider it, they had meetings, they seemed to be very intrigued by the idea, but ultimately they decided not to move ahead with it. This was during the time where they were kind of cutting things back. R.I.P. Prodigy. So it does make sense that rather than green-lighting more things, they were saying no to things, they were cutting things back. They also said that there were some thematic clashes with Starfleet Academy, which was an Earth-based series, which obviously has been greenlit, is releasing, and so there were a few clashes with some of the themes in that series as well. But that hasn't stopped Sussman from refining the concept. He's changed the setting from Earth to Babel, so that the clashes with Starfleet Academy are no longer an issue. Also be quite interesting to have a series set on a different planet. Something that is kind of isolated to one location, not all the time, but not a well-known location like a starship or like being on Earth. Like, it would be quite interesting, I feel, to set something on a planet such as Babel, somewhere that you can explore and learn more about, and it's something that is familiar to viewers but also can be new at the same time. And like I say, I think that's the key. Keeping familiarity, but also introducing something new as well. So the key thing here as well is that we have now had the Skydance merger sorted, finalised, finally. And because of this, Sussman now wonders if now is the time to maybe repitch this idea. And this is what he told Trek Movie, quote, "The hope is that Paramount is planning to invest more in Star Trek on television, and they've been very clear about how they want to make Paramount Plus a real player in the streaming space." There has been a lot of talk about this merger, what it means for Star Trek going forwards, but it's not just Sussman who is feeling like now might be the time to maybe pitch new ideas. San Diego Comic-Con, there was mention by Akiva Goldsman about Star Trek Year One. Also at Star Trek Las Vegas this week, Simon Pegg said that perhaps now is the time to maybe pitch the fourth Kelvin movie as well. So there is change happening. Maybe that's good in terms of pitching new ideas. Maybe it isn't. That remains to be seen. But it definitely feels like there are some conversations happening behind the scenes about the future of Star Trek. Now, in terms of Scott Bakula and his thoughts on this new series, obviously he has been involved in some of the ideas with Sussman, but he was asked about it during his panel at Star Trek Las Vegas on Sunday, which was his first appearance at the convention since 2016, by the way. He was a last-minute addition to the roster of guests, to a lot of people's surprise and joy. But he simply said, "You never know." So again, I don't think they really know if this is actually going to happen, but it's definitely a conversation that has been happening. There's a concept there, and it's more than just a vague idea. There's ideas deeper in terms of storyline, in terms of setting, in terms of the structure and the genre of what this show could be. So it's certainly at a further level than other ideas and concepts. So who knows what's going to happen with that? I think, as I say, this is maybe a good show to have moving forwards. It's funny that this idea was sparked from Star Trek Picard. Now, obviously something that a lot of fans have been championing for is Star Trek Legacy. And I think the key to that is that existing fans want to see those legacy characters returning. They want to see the characters they're familiar with returning to the show. You know, it's a comfort thing. We want to see those characters we've grown up watching, we've made connections to. And so it can be daunting and a little bit off-putting when new shows are introduced that are just introducing all these new characters that feel like, where are we going with Star Trek? But at the same time, it is important that we have new shows moving forwards, because that keeps the longevity of Star Trek. If we just had legacy characters all the time, you wouldn't be enticing new viewers or new audience members because they wouldn't understand what's going on. So it's about finding the great balance in the middle here so that you have a show that's appealing to the existing viewers, the existing fans, and is satisfying to them, but also doesn't isolate new viewers, because that's how you keep a franchise going. It's by introducing new viewers, younger viewers, and to keep the show building and growing and evolving. This concept definitely seems like it could work in that way, because you have that legacy character at the forefront. But beyond that, you have all these new ideas and concepts that could be explored in terms of following more of a political aspect that obviously is there in Star Trek all the time, but isn't necessarily the sole purpose of the show. There are lots of stories that are told that have political commentary massively rooted within storylines, but to have a political thriller, as Sussman describes, could be very interesting. I think the key as well is to, as I say, find the good balance, because if you look at Picard as an example, Season 3 was great fan service and did so much for nostalgia and making fans really happy in terms of seeing all those favourite characters returning. But if you look at the first 2 seasons, where they tried to do what we're trying to describe here, have a legacy character at the forefront, but then introduce new ideas, there were some areas that didn't necessarily work out quite so well. So I think the key moving forward is to have a show that finds that balance of having the legacy characters appealing to or appeasing the existing fans, but also enough new concepts and new structures and new stories that you're not going to isolate new viewers as well, because that's the future of the show. So who knows what's going to happen? It is exciting that these conversations have been happening. It's also kind of reassuring to know that although there is uncertainty around what's happening in Paramount, Skydance, the creators of Star Trek are not holding back. They're still coming forwards with their concepts and ideas. You gotta love Star Trek creatives, Star Trek fans. The Star Trek community in general is just a very lovely place to be, is it not? So let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on this Star Trek United series. What sort of stories would you like it to tell? Do you think it's going to happen? If so, when do you think it might happen? It's exciting, it really, really is. Hopefully the next video you will see will be the return of Mr. Sean Ferrick. He'll be telling us all about his travels in Las Vegas, and we won't be jealous at all, will we? Folks, look after yourselves. Thank you very much for putting up with me instead of Sean this week. Until I see you again, keep safe, keep well, live long and prosper.